What is up, guys? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video, and today it's time for another RTX 3070 gaming PC build with just about as much RGB as I could get in there. I'm going to take you through all the parts I chose and why today, the build process step by step, so if you want to follow along for yourself, you can do, before booting this machine up and seeing exactly how this Gaming X Trio card from MSI performs. Without any further ado though, let's dive into it. As always, I'm going to kick things off by installing our RAM and our CPU today into the motherboard. Now, I've gone for an Intel CPU, and some people are going to be really confused as to why I've done that. Ryzen 5000 has shown itself to be great, but the CPUs are about $100 more expensive each than the previous gen, which makes the single-threaded beast that is this i5-10600K actually a really great value option. Motherboards have also got more expensive on the AMD side. B550 boards go for about 150 each, and X570 closer to 200. So this Gigabyte Z490 Vision G, which has the perfect colour scheme to match today's build as well, with its Intel CPU support and plenty of M.2 expandability, is once again a pretty good value choice. In terms of installing the CPU into the motherboard, it's not going to be too tricky. We're just going to pull back this retention clip and not touch the black plastic socket cover just yet. We're going to line up the triangle and our CPU today. That's this tiny gold mark in the bottom left corner of our CPU with the bottom left corner of the socket. Drop it very gently into place, give it a little bit of a wiggle, and we're then just going to return the socket cover back down, and the black cover is going to fly off. Don't throw this away, because if you need to return the motherboard or something like that, you're probably going to need it. Now then, let's take our RAM next up. This is the ADATA Spectrix D50. XPG have been very kind and sent out loads of parts for today's build. They now make RAM and power supplies and SSDs, and on the whole make great value RGB components, which is a great fit here on the GeekaWhat channel. Installing the RAM's pretty easy. We're going to pull back the DIMM slots on the second and fourth RAM DIMMs. That's going to make sure we've got some nice dual channel performance. Line the notch on the top of our RAM DIMM with the corresponding notch on our motherboard, a little something like this, and then just repeat for as many RAM DIMMs as you've got. In our case, we've got 2 DIMMs installed with room for another 2 if you wanted to upgrade later on. Next up today then is another component from XPG. This is their Spectrix S40G. I've used this little RGB M.2 drive a lot, and with 500 gig and 1 terabyte capacities available and pretty fairly priced, it's going to work perfectly today. You're going to want to remove any M.2 heatsink covers so we can definitely see the RGB today, and we're just going to slide the drive very easily into place. We're then just going to use this teeny tiny little M.2 screw to secure the drive down and make sure it doesn't try and escape from our system today. There we go, the M.2 drive is in, and our motherboard assembly, as we call it, is now pretty much complete. The next component we're going to deal with today is our case or our chassis choice. This is the white XPG Battlecruiser. I've actually been rocking this case in black in my own personal system for, I want to say, a year now since it came out. This white version looks really cool. We've got this quite thick tempered glass side panel, which not only sits on the front of the case, but also at the rear here as well. Inside any case, you're going to find either a brown box or a black plastic bag, and this includes all the kind of mounting hardware and accessories you need to install the motherboard into the chassis. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this case has got all the standoffs we need pre-installed, as long as we've got 3 holes at the top, 3 holes along the middle, and 3 along the bottom, which correspond to the black standoffs in our case. We're pretty much good to go. This motherboard's got a built-in I/O shield, so no need to worry about snapping that one into place. And we can just slide the motherboard in, and the raised center standoff, which you should be able to see next to our M.2 drive, is going to hold it into place just for the time being. We could install our CPU cooler next up, but I think first I'm going to pop the power supply in while all the cables and the ports are still super easy to access. This is another component from XPG today, and this is their new 750 watt Core Reactor power supply. What a name for a power supply. It's fully modular, so you only plug in the cables you need. It's all super nicely labelled. All in all, feels Pretty solid for a power supply. You also get the cables nicely bagged up so that everything is super fresh when you get it. Talking of cables, we don't need all of our cables today. We just need to get into the bag first. The largest connector today, a 24-pin motherboard power cable, a dual 6+2-pin PCIe power harness, a SATA power cable for our RGB hubs and anything like that, and then finally a 4+4-pin or 8-pin CPU power cable. Okay then, with the power supply installed, it's pretty easy. You just got to pop these 4 screws through the bracket. Now, when it comes to installing the cables, we're going to do that now while everything's still easy to access. XPG have also sent over some RGB cable extensions. These are optional, but I'll link them alongside all the components today in the description below. That's quite cool actually. It's got these kind of RGB covers over each of the cables, and just comes out the packet pretty easily and is controlled by a single 3-pin addressable RGB power connector. The regular 24-pin power supply cable then just clips right on into the end, just like so, and we're going to cable manage that a little bit later. I'm going to go ahead and plug in our 4+4-pin or 8-pin CPU power cable next, and that routes up to the top left-hand side of the motherboard, just like so. Now that those are installed, I'm also going to pop in the front panel cables. First up is USB 3, which goes to the right hand side of the motherboard. It's keyed and will only go in one way round. HD audio is next up. That goes to the bottom left of the board today and has a pin blocked out, so will once again only go in one way around. Finally then, we've got our front panel connectors, the JFP1 ports. If you get these the wrong way around, don't worry, they are the fiddliest cables we'll have to contend with today, but I'll pop a diagram on your screen now to try and make this as easy as possible. Okay then, all that's really left to do before we install the graphics card today, which I know you're going to be super duper excited about, is to install the CPU cooler. This is once again the cooler I've been rocking in my personal rig for about a year or so, which genuinely explains, not sure if you can see that, some of the dust on the bottom of the cooler. I have given it a nice old clean. This is the XPG Levante 240. I feel like XPG have got the best product names out there, I swear. Inside the box, you're also going to find a couple of these really nicely designed addressable RGB fans, which are going to look great in the build today. Removing the top panel is going to make things nice and easy to work with. There's plenty of glass on this case, and we just need to take off this top radiator bracket, which makes installing the radiator super duper easy. Now, we're actually going to install the radiator today around about here on the radiator bracket to make sure there's enough clearance for all the RAM and the cables and that kind of thing. That's then just going to slot back down into our case so we can secure the water block into place. Okay then, all we then need to do now is grab this circular water block mount, this pre-included backplate, as well as these standoffs and these thumb screws. The backplate is going to go through the rear of the motherboard, and those standoffs are just going to screw into the 4 backplate holes. We're then just going to pop a little bit of thermal paste on our CPU today, before finally screwing and securing the water block back into place. Moving on then today to the very final part of this build, and that is of course the graphics card. I'm breaking the white colour scheme a little bit for this component, but I'm pretty sure I can be forgiven. This is the absolute monster that is the MSI RTX 3070 Gaming X Trio, with 2 large fans and a slightly smaller fan over there, a really nice all metal backplate, an RGB light bar. It's a fantastic looking graphics card. You can also see by the width, it's about 2.5, maybe 3 slots in its actual size. And in terms of length, this isn't a small case, and it's only just really fitting in. I covered the comparison to this and the Founders Edition in a recent video, which you can find in the card section here, and it's pretty mind-boggling. In fact, it's so big that MSI include a GPU support bracket, which we're going to give a go today to try and make sure the graphics card doesn't sag too much. Installing the GPU is easy. I need my screwdriver. Here it is. We're just going to remove the 2nd and 3rd PCIe slot covers, and there we have it. I've just kind of fastened this GPU support bracket on top of the already existing PCIe brackets, and then I'm just going to whack in our power supply extension cables for the graphics card today. Wires everywhere. And there we have it. That is looking absolutely awesome. The white cables are going to light up soon, but even when this machine is all powered off, it's an absolute absolute beast. It really, really is. All that's really left to do then is to boot this machine up and see how it looks when it's all powered up, but more importantly, how it performs in a full benchmark section where I'm going to test it out with around 15 of the most popular AAA titles. Without any further ado though, there's only one thing left for it, and that's to roll the montage. Alrighty then, let's see just how well this system performs, putting it through its paces in around 15 of the latest, most popular, most demanding AAA titles. Kicking things off straight away with Stranding at 1440p high settings with DLSS enabled, sees 135 FPS on average, with 90 and 99th percentile results of 130 and 128 respectively, meaning this system stayed above 128 frames per second pretty much the whole time. GTA 5 is a similarly positive story. Despite being on the old side a little bit now, it's still very demanding to run, and at 1440p high settings, you look at 128 FPS on average, tested in the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode, meaning you can go and compare this system to some of my others without too much of an issue. Control at 1440p high settings with DLSS set to performance and RTX on medium sees 106 FPS on average, with 92 and 89 for those 90 and 99th percentiles. Apex Legends is a similarly positive story, 1440p high settings, with the frame rate cap disabled in the origin settings, sees 156 FPS on average, with 90% results of 129 and 99th percentile results of 112, giving you kind of esports level frame rates at 1440p pretty much maxed out. Call of Duty's Warzone was pretty close in terms of frame rate, 128, 112 and 92 for the average 90 and 99th percentile results, tested at 1440p high settings, so not a bad show really. Forza Horizon 4 is a personal favourite of mine, and I'll sneak it in here because it's a really good comparative benchmark. 154 FPS with the 1440p Ultra preset, with 142 and 132 for the average 90 and 99th percentile results. Overwatch is next up then, 204 frames per second at 1440p high settings for that average frame rate, with 183 and 163 for the 90 and 99th percentile results respectively. Counter-Strike Global Offensive CSGO is next up, an easy game to run but still a really good test of any system. 1440p high settings sees 275 FPS on average, which is kind of crazy, and it's what you'd come to expect of an easy game to run like CSGO. Battlefield 5 is kind of on the other end of the spectrum, and with RTX enabled, it's just a bit too much to handle in my opinion at 1440p high settings. Therefore, with it disabled, you look at 163 FPS on average, with 143 and 105 for those 90 and 99th percentile results, with of course DLSS enabled. Next up is Minecraft RTX, 61 frames per second in the Minecraft RTX beta, with a render distance of 8 chunks. 41 and 38 follow behind for those 90 and 99th percentile results, showing just how demanding and not yet that well optimised Minecraft's RTX beta is. Doom Eternal at 1440p with the Nightmare preset, not quite Ultra Nightmare, but Nightmare, sees 182 FPS. And this game is a fantastic test of kind of generic non-ray tracing rasterization. 160 and 143 for the 90 and 99th percentile results are also very strong numbers. Talking of strong numbers, Rainbow Six Siege. 1440p very high settings sees 254, 205 and 182 frames per second for those 90, 99th and of course average frame rate results. And that was in the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode, meaning if you want to go and compare it against my other systems, you're more than able to do so. Valorant is the penultimate title today, the one but last, and at 1440p high settings with reflex enabled and the boost set to on, which is going to get rid of any kind of input lag and help speeden your reaction times. You're looking 282 for the average, 246 for the 90th, and 214 for the 99th percentile results. Truly esports level frame rates at 1440p high settings. That's impressive in any game. Finally then, the last game today is Fortnite. 226 frames per second on average is one hell of a result at 1440p high settings with reflex and DLSS both enabled and ray tracing of course disabled. 211 and 191 for those 90 and 99th percentile results is an equally impressive showing, and all in all makes for a great gaming experience. With that being said though, that pretty much wraps it up, not only for the benchmarks today, but for the whole video. If you did enjoy it, you know what to do, give it a big old like rating, get subscribed, thank you very much for watching, but as always, we'll see you in the next one.